Spanish author and journalist Arturo Perez-Reverte once defined the Vatican City as the smallest yet the most powerful state on Earth. This tiny city-state nested inside Rome measures only 0.17 square miles with a population of 840 inhabitants. Yet its ruler, the Pope, holds spiritual, moral, and sometimes even political influence over a community of 1.4 billion Catholics worldwide. For all its influence, little is known about the Vatican City-State. Well, at least we knew very little about it when we started researching this video. One of the team here at Biographics is actually from Rome, and he even had no idea how many exorcisms have been performed within the Vatican walls. So please join us today as we explore today's Biographics video, the Vatican City-State. A full history of the papacy would take us more than our usual 20 minutes, so what we're going to do is we're going to focus on some events that led to the Vatican becoming the city-state that it is today. In ancient times, the term Vatican identified an area of marshes and hills in Rome stretching from today's Milvio Bridge to the Sixtus Bridge. The origin of the word Vatican is still disputed. According to Roman historian Sextus Pompeius Festus, the area was a meeting point for Etruscan priests, experts at predicting the future, or Vates, hence Vatican. Fast forward to the current era, and tradition has it that St. Peter suffered martyrdom in the area in the persecutions ordered by Nero in 64 CE. The area became a growing necropolis, which was then covered by a large basilica around 324 CE. This was dedicated to St. Peter, and it was commissioned by Emperor Constantine, the first ruler of Rome to convert to Christianity. For centuries, the popes resided elsewhere in the Lateran palaces until Popes Eugene III and Innocent III developed new buildings in the area around St. Peter's Church. This was in the late 12th and early 13th centuries. But the great changes that led to St. Peter's Square and the Vatican to become the tourist attractions that we know today, they were introduced by Julius II from 1503 to 1513. Pope Julius summoned Raphael and Michelangelo to Rome, asking them respectively to fresco the papal apartments and the Sistine Chapel. After the Pope's death, Michelangelo continued an even greater masterpiece, the planning and building of the Basilica of St. Peter. The famous dome was added by another architect, Giacomo della Porta. In the 17th century, Baroque mastermind Gian Lorenzo Bernini completed the splendid St. Peter's Square with its hemicycles of 4 rows of columns. At the time, Vatican City wasn't really a thing, let alone a state. Until the 20th of September 1870, Roman popes were spiritual and temporal leaders in charge of a larger state of the Church, which at its peak occupied all of central Italy. In March of 1861, with the unification of Italy, the state of the Church was reduced to Rome and its surrounding areas, protected by Napoleon III of France. Only in September of 1870 did the Italian army occupy Rome, relegating the Pope within the Leonine walls that surrounds the Vatican estate. For almost 60 years, the relationship of the Italian government and the Holy See remained tense, and the temporal powers of the Pope were undefined. This changed with the signing of the Lateran Pact between the Holy See and Italy on February 11th, 1929. The pact effectively marked the foundation of Vatican City as a sovereign state, universally recognized under international law. Mussolini's government celebrated by opening Reconciliation Avenue, which leads straight into St. Peter's Square. Time now for a quick-fire gallery of some of the popes that have ruled over the Vatican and the Catholic faith since the foundation of the city-state. From 1922 to 1939, Pope Pius XI became famous for his relationship with the fascist dictators of the time, wary of the threat that communism, a materialistic doctrine, posed on Catholicism. He was the pope who signed the Lateran Pact in 1929, but also a concordat with Hitler, in the hopes that this relationship might help stem the rising tide of communism. He was followed by Pius XII, who had the difficult task of leading Catholics through the ordeal of World War II. He was accused by some of failing to do enough to help the Jews from systematic persecution, while other Catholics are campaigning for him to become a saint. The cause for his sainthood? The fact that he hid Jews during the war. An answer may lie in his section of the secret archive of the Vatican. John XXIII ruled from 1958 to 1963, but those 5 short years left an enduring mark. One of the most beloved popes in recent church history, John convenes the Second Vatican Council, which inaugurated many changes in the Roman Catholic Church. For example, it allowed the use of local languages instead of Latin during Mass. It also toned down the doctrine of papal primacy. Or if you like, it introduced a communal decision-making process in matters of the Church, which is different to the previous absolute rule of the Pope. John Paul II, the first non-Italian pope in centuries, was in charge from 1978 to 2005, one of the longest reigning pontiffs. Formerly the Bishop of Krakow, Pope Wojtyla was involved in matters of foreign policy, supporting a democratic agenda, most notably opposing communist dictatorships in Eastern Europe. On the 21st of July 1981, he survived an assassination attempt by a Turkish right-wing extremist, Ali Agcar. Agcar was a member of the organization The Grey Wolves and claimed that his was a gesture to protect the imperialism of both the West and the USSR. More on this in a bit. The successor, formerly known as Cardinal Ratzinger, was Benedict XVI. He is best remembered for his abdication due to health concerns in 2013, although he has been very active in calls for peace in the Middle East and in seeking unity with the Eastern Orthodox Christians. He has also been a controversial figure due to his ultra-traditionalist agenda and his involvement in World War II. We should specify that at the end of the war he was barely 18 and he had been forcibly drafted at 16, but the only action he ever saw involved spotting bombing raids and digging trenches. The current Pope, Argentine Francis I, has attracted media attention thanks to his use of social media, his simple lifestyle, and his changes to Vatican institutions. He has initiated a reform of the Roman Curia, which is the group of bureaus that assist the Pope in the day-to-day running of the Roman Catholic Church. He also looked into the affairs of the Vatican Bank, calling for more financial transparency and its investments. He will also be remembered for his purging of the high clergy for individuals found guilty of sexual abuse, a problem that has marred the image of the Catholic Church for decades. To carry out these reforms, Francis has set up a task force of cardinals known as C9. In December 2018, though, Francis had to remove 2 cardinals from the very task force following sexual abuse allegations. Alright, so with that out of the way, let's look at who exactly is a pope and what are their powers. And by the way, I'm going to be using the male pronoun here because all popes have been male so far, with the possible legendary exception of Pope S. Joan, but that's a story for another day. In early Christianity, the Pope was the Bishop of Rome, but not necessarily the head of the Church. It was a 5th century Pope, Leo the Great, who introduced the concept of papal primacy. According to Leo, the Apostle Peter continued to speak to the Christian community through his successors, the Bishop of Rome. In the 11th century, Pope Gregory VII greatly expanded the temporal power of the papacy, in other words, their influence over worldly matters. The power of the papacy was further sanctioned by the Second Council of Lyon in 1274, but the doctrine of papal primacy was finally developed at the First Vatican Council in 1870. It reinforced once and for all that the Roman Church holds the preeminence of ordinary power over all the other churches. This was also the same council that approved the dogma of papal infallibility on matters of faith. All these steps cemented the authority of the Pope as a spiritual leader for Catholics, a temporal ruler of his state, and a powerful source of influence over other Catholic powers. An example of this influence is the Treaty of Tordesillas on the 7th of June, 1494. This treaty was mediated by Pope Alexander VI, Pope Borgia, to avoid a war between Spain and Portugal over colonial possessions. The Pope effectively succeeded in splitting the planet into 2 areas of influence assigned to each of the 2 naval powers. We've learned what popes do, but how is the Vatican City state ruled today? The central government is made up of the Pope and his Roman Curia that assist him in carrying out his responsibilities towards the universal church. This is identified as the Holy See. The mission of the Holy See is defined as announcing the truth of the gospel of Jesus for the salvation of all humanity and in the service of peace and justice in favor of all peoples. The Vatican City state has the characteristic of being an instrument of the independence of the Holy See and of the Catholic Church from any earthly power. The Pope is elected by cardinals younger than 80 during an assembly called conclave. The moment the new Pope accepts his election, he becomes the sovereign of Vatican City, an absolute monarch with full legislative, executive, and judicial powers. Popes are assisted in their executive powers by the cardinal president of the Pontifical Commission, also known as the President of the Governate. The president works closely with the Secretary General, also a cardinal, who heads the Secretariat of State and manages relations with foreign states. To put it into UK terms, for my ease, the Pope is like the monarch, the Queen, the President is like our Prime Minister, and the Secretariat is basically the Foreign Office. And for all of you Americans watching, well, you rejected the rule of our fair monarch about 250 years ago, so the parallel stops at just the President and the Department of State. The Vatican City State is recognized by all UN members and is an active member of international organizations and adheres to international agreements. In addition to its ruling functions, the city-state hosts some pretty interesting institutions, of which I am going to cover two in particular. The Vatican Observatory is a scientific research institute of the Holy See and one of the oldest astronomical institutes in the world. In 1891, Leo XIII formally founded the Vatican Observatory on a hillside behind the Dome of St. Peter's. At the beginning of the 1930s, the urban growth was brightening the sky so much that the fainter stars could no longer be studied. That is why the observatory was relocated to the Alban Hills of southeast Rome. In 1981, the observatory expanded to a second research center, the Vatican Observatory Research Group, VORG, in Tucson, Arizona. In 1993, the Vatican Observatory and the University of Arizona inaugurated the Vatican Advanced Technology Telescope, VATT, on Mount Graham, probably the best astronomical site in the mainland United States. Vatican scientific research includes the spectral classification of the stars and the composition of dark clouds from which new stars are born. In addition, the Italian site holds a unique meteorite collection from which a knowledge of the early solar system is being derived. To further prove that the Church can coexist with science, since 1987, the Vatican Observatory has collaborated with the University of Berkeley, California, on a series of seminars bringing together science, philosophy, and theology on the theme of divine action from a scientific perspective. Another little-known institution is the Apostolic Penitentiary. One of the key sacraments of Catholicism is confession. By confessing your sins to a priest, you can be absolved of them, provided that you carry out the assigned penance. For lesser sins, a series of prayers will do, but some sins are simply too much for a priest to forgive. There are 5 specific sins that require absolution from the Apostolic Penitentiary, a secretive tribunal which revealed its work only in 2009. 3 of these sins can only be committed by the clergy. Number 1, breaking the secrecy of confession. Number 2, offering confession to one's sexual partner, which should not be there in the first place, as Catholic clergy make a vow of chastity. And number 3, participating in an abortion and then studying to become a priest. The other 2 can be committed by anyone, and they are: Number 1, desecrating the Eucharist. This is the commemoration of the Last Supper via the Holy Communion, a rite in which bread and wine represent the body and blood of Christ. This sin is featured prominently in the novel The Exorcist. And the second one, that's attempting to assassinate the Pope, and I really don't need to explain that one further. There is another little visited place in the Vatican, and that's the legendary secret archives that are said to conceal proof of the existence of demons and aliens, but we'll have more on that later. But for now, let's consider this question. If we were to attempt an invasion of the Vatican, who would try and stop us? Logically, the world's smallest country is defended by the world's smallest military, the Swiss Guard. This elite corps, numbering around 150 troops, has protected the Pope since 1506. These soldiers are mostly known for their ceremonial role during official receptions and visits, where they can be seen marching in impressively coloured uniforms, almost unchanged since the 16th century. The Swiss Guard does not shun modern equipment, though, such as modern 3D printed helmets, firearms, and pepper spray. In addition to ceremonial duties, these soldiers perform concrete security tasks. They guard the access entrances to the Vatican and act as bodyguards to the Pope, even accompanying him on international travels. These soldiers may look like extras at a Renaissance fair, but they are well-trained fighters, and joining their ranks is not easy. Here are the criteria to be a Swiss Guard, and see if you could fit in. Are you male, aged 19 to 26? Are you single? Are you Swiss? Are you at least 1.76 meters tall, that's 5 foot 9 inches? Do you hold an apprenticeship or post-secondary degree? Are you a Catholic with an irreproachable reputation? Have you successfully completed military military school in Switzerland. That's 18 weeks of basic training, followed by 7 recalls of 3 weeks each for a total of 260 days. Finally, are you ready to serve at least 26 months? If the answer is yes to all of the above, then you are welcome to join the ranks of the Swiss Guard with a basic pay of $20,000 per year, plus board and lodging being provided by the state. The basic pay is okay if you're 20, but still low for Swiss standards. This, plus the restrictive requirements, have caused recruitment numbers to dwindle a bit. That is why recently Pope Francis has allowed all soldiers of the Guard to marry, a privilege previously only allowed to officers. Troopers must have served for at least 5 years, though, before being allowed to start a family. A lesser-known security force within the city-state is the Vatican Gendarmerie. This corps was originally founded by Pope Pius VII on the 14th of January 1816. After several changes, their duties were solidified by Pope John Paul II in July of 2002. They encompass security and public order, all regular police duties, border control, crime prevention and investigation, and enforcement of financial and commercial regulations. The Gendarmerie is made up of 130 to 150 officers who have jurisdiction over the entire territory of the Vatican, except for the Pope's personal residence and the Apostolic Palace, which is patrolled by the Swiss Guard. They also cooperate with the Guard when it comes to protecting the Pope at home and abroad. The Gendarmerie's patrols in touristic spots see plenty of action, as they have to constantly apprehend pickpockets. In some cases, the Gendarmerie has conducted more high-profile investigations. On the 23rd of May 2012, they arrested Paolo Gabriele, personal butler to Benedict XVI, accused of stealing and leaking to the press some classified documents belonging to the Pope. The documents concerned alleged corruption within the city-state. According to Gabriele, the Pope was completely non-implicated and unaware of these attempts to corrupt Vatican officials. Unlike the Swiss Guard, the gendarmes dress in modern blue uniforms and are equipped with Glock and Beretta handguns, as well as Heckler & Koch assault rifles. The requisites to entry are very similar to the ones for the Swiss Guard, except you have to be Italian. New recruits are given a crash course of 2 months, during which they only have 1 hour of leave. Those who want to specialize in SWAT techniques can join the Gendarmerie's Rapid Intervention Group, which trains regularly with the 9th Parachute Regiment, a sort of SAS of the Italian army. So if you were to invade, you would have to overcome the stiff resistance of 300 well-trained, well-armed personnel. After that battle, you may indeed gain access to the most secretive places of the city-state. And let's look at those, shall we? Earlier on, I alluded to the secret archives of the Vatican and the mysteries they may hold, including documents on the existence of extraterrestrials and even demons. And to be honest, we have to confess that we might have exaggerated here. These are unsubstantiated claims, and the truth of the secret archives is much more prosaic. First of all, the archives are not really secret. Their official name in Latin is, and the pronunciation is going to be a bit of a mission, but Archivum Secretum Apostolicum Vaticanum? Maybe? I know Latin pronunciation is a bit of a weird thing, but there it is. But here's the thing, secretum in Latin, it doesn't actually mean secret, it rather means personal or private. The archives are in fact made up of the private letters and historic records of past popes over the centuries. But the specimens within the archives are no less interesting. Among its gems, a validated scholar can find a scroll containing the minutes of the trials of the Knights Templar, which ended with the destruction of the order in 1314, or notes relating to another trial, the one against Galileo Galilei in 1633. Personal correspondence from past popes includes a letter from Clement XII to the 7th Dalai Lama requesting protection for Franciscan missionaries in Tibet. There's also letters sent by both US Civil War leaders Abraham Lincoln and Jefferson Davis, who in 1863 wrote to Pope Pius IX asking for legitimacy of the Union or Confederacy causes. I expect he probably replied with non subscribo. In truth, some of the personal notes are yet to be declassified. These include the correspondence of Pius XII, the controversial Hitler Pope. Francis I may declassify these documents in the near future, which will reveal whether he was complicit in the persecution of the Jews or if he actively protected them during the war. This is just one of the unsolved mysteries housed within the Vatican walls. On the 29th of September 1978, recently elected Pope John Paul I was found dead in his bed after only 33 days in office. Vatican officials claimed that the 65-year-old had died of a heart attack, but there was never an autopsy. Almost immediately, conspiracy theories linked his death to a mafia hit. At the time, the Vatican definitely had ties to organized crime. In 1982, the president of the Vatican Bank, Cardinal Paul Marcinkus, resigned from his post after a series of scandals exposed the bank's ties to the mafia. The cardinal was never indicted of a crime, although he was suspected of being involved in the mysterious death of John Paul I, who had announced his intention of cleaning up the Vatican Bank. Marcinkus successfully claimed diplomatic immunity in the United States, retired to Arizona in 1990, and died there in 2006. A fictionalized version of this story is a major plot point in The Godfather Part 3. John Paul's is not the only mysterious death within the Vatican. On May 4, 1998, Colonel Alois Esteman was named commander of the Pope's Swiss Guard. A few hours later, the colonel, his wife Gladys Meza Romero, and a young Swiss guard, Cedric Tournay, were found dead in Esteman's flat in the Vatican City. The official version was that the disgruntled Tournay had killed his commander and his wife before committing suicide. This version was disputed by Tournay's mother and her lawyers, who claimed it was a cover-up. An independent autopsy found that Tournay had died from a 7mm bullet wound, while his service handgun had a 9mm caliber. So, well, what really happened? According to the lawyers, this was a triple homicide, part of a power struggle within the Vatican linked to an assassination attempt on John Paul II that was foiled by Esteman. Another theory was brought to light by Antonino Arconte, a former commander of the NATO secret stay-behind organization, also known as Gladio. Gladio agents were undercover operatives tasked with staging guerrilla actions in case of a Soviet invasion of Western Europe. Arconte claims to have met with Esteman shortly before his death, and that the colonel was actually a former spy of the Stasi, the East German secret police, infiltrated within the Vatican. His codename was Werder. Esteman had promised to Arconte some revelations about the failed attempt on John Paul II's life. It seems like the shooter, Aleacha, was a pawn of the Bulgarian secret services, in turn manipulated by the KGB. The Soviets were concerned about the Polish Pope's influence on anti-communist movements in Eastern Europe. Esteman feared for his life because of this and the other secrets and was planning to flee Italy, but he didn't make it. These theories have never been substantiated, and the official version, it still stands. The story, however, is proof of how not even the Vatican is immune from murder and sinister forces. And speaking of sinister forces, someone who deals with truly dark forces is the Vatican's chief exorcist, Father Gabriel Amorth. Before his death in 2016, Father Amorth claimed to have expelled more than 300 demons a year from his Vatican office. Father Amorth says he has experienced victims of possession levitate in mid-air and vomit pieces of iron as well as shards of glass and nails. On one occasion, the devil, speaking through a possessed woman, boasted that he would make her spit a radio, and she actually started regurgitating it one piece at a time. Amorth was a controversial figure in life, attributing the wave of sex scandals in the church to the Antichrist who was waging war on the Holy See. But despite his firm belief in supernatural dark forces, he always stressed that most cases of satanic possession are symptoms of psychiatric illness. He admitted that only about 100 of the cases he treated involved a genuine possession, referring all others to the expert care of psychiatric doctors. He's actually a pretty interesting character, and if you didn't know, we do another channel called Biographics with biographies. If you'd like to see us do a video on him, let us know in the comments below. What we haven't covered so far are the architectural and artistic marvels of the Vatican City, definitely one of the most astonishing tourist attractions in the world. The most famous spots are, of course, the St. Peter's Basilica and the Sistine Chapel. St. Peter's is so well known that I really don't need to describe it to you. If you go there, prepare to feel dwarfed by its size. If you look at this bronze canopy built by architect Bernini, you'd probably say, yeah, it's kind of tall, big deal. But you probably couldn't tell that it's actually 10 stories high, and this is because it sits underneath the cupola, the dome, which is 452 feet tall, that's 136 meters, and 138 feet, 42 meters, in diameter. Also, look out for one of Michelangelo's masterpieces, the sculpture La Pieta, depicting the dying Jesus in Mary's arms. See if you can spot the exact point where Mary's arm was broken. In 1972, a mentally disturbed man named Laszlo Toth attacked the sculpture with a hammer. He broke Mary's nose and arm at the elbow. The sculpture was restored, and now it's the only work of art in the basilica protected by bulletproof glass. Finally, make sure you don't miss the underground section underneath the main altar, where you can visit the tombs of famous popes, including one of St. Peter himself. In 1953, a set of bones were found in that spot. Testing revealed they belonged to a man in his 60s, just like Peter at the time of his martyrdom. The bones had remnants of purple thread, a color that would have only been used to wrap the body of someone who was seen as royal or holy. The Sistine Chapel, after Sixtus IV, hosts the conclave for the election of the Pope. Here, the cardinals are kept in complete lockdown until the new head of the church is appointed. It's also home to Michelangelo's genius. In 1508, Julius II commissioned Michelangelo with frescoing the ceiling. And in 1533, the artist returned to paint the iconic Last Judgment, depicting the glorious return of Christ. What is surprising about Michelangelo's masterpiece is that the ceiling of the chapel was his first ever experience in painting a fresco. In fact, in his first stab at it, he completely botched the mixture of paint and lime, resulting in mold growing over his paintings. But he got good at it, finding the right mix, and even invented an innovative system of scaffolding that's still in use today. So now you might be wondering, well, why did he accept the job if it wasn't his forte? Well, it seems like he was recommended for the job by another artist, Bramante. Bramante was a rival of Michelangelo, and his recommendation was not intended to favor him, but rather to set him up for failure and humiliate him in front of the Pope. As we can all see today, this did not work out. So I really hope you enjoyed today's exploration, and I know in the comments you're going to tell me that I missed a whole bunch of stuff. This video was super long. There's only so much we can fit in. We really did our best, and we wanted to give you a great background, at least barely even scratching the surface, even in this super long video. But I really hope you enjoyed it. But if you like this video, give it a like, and let us know if you'd like to know more about any of the characters in this video, because like I say, we do have that other channel, Biographics. We could make videos on there about them. Also, this is a brand new channel, so please do subscribe if you want to, and hit that notification bell so you find out when we put out a new video. And as always, thank you for watching.